Untold ages ago, when the world was still young, before the dominion of man, there was another kin, a race of beings named the Akulnumen. They were roughly humanoid, but taller and broader, and their skin was a translucent grey-blue. They had no features on their faces beside a great many eyes, blue or green in color. From atop their heads sprouted glowing, translucent membranes and tendrils, like the corpus of a jellyfish. The color of this feature varied greatly between individuals, but it was always glowing and brilliant, something that humans would have been quite mesmerized by. The skin of these ancient peoples was beset with pores for respiration, and they had no need to eat. For a long time, these creatures lived on the surface of the earth just as we do now. They built great cities of stone and carved their homes into the mountains themselves. Nature was a friend to them. Unlike us, they did not see themselves as separate from it, despite their great intellect and power. They understood things that yet elude us. They knew how to be one with the world around them. Their cities were not borders that disrupted the life of the earth, but part of its ecosystem. Their stone labyrinths were every bit as natural as the web of a spider or the nest of a bird. Back then, there were far more creatures living on this planet of ours, many of them cousin species of the Akulnumen. Now, none remain. After a great many eons of civilization, a prophecy was to be fulfilled. Those ancient people, just as us, carried beliefs about the world. They believed that at the dawn of existence, back when they still had scales and fins, long before the modern kin of the Akulnumen came to be, their ancestors emerged from the sea. Back then it was an escape from the monsters of the deep that preyed upon their kind. It was foretold that one day they would evolve to live on land, and even further yet, the cosmos would see fit to grant them the faculties to return to the sea. It would be a gift from the universe, a reward for the unyielding faith of the Akulnumen, who stayed true to their primordial plan for nigh eternity. Those strange denizens of the past believed that every great body of water held a divine secret. Their prophecy foretold that one day, when the wheel of time had run far enough, a selected hero of their kind would venture into the depths of the ocean. There he would find the final sign, the last rite of passage for their people to return to the great kingdom of their inception. An individual named Dendridos would rise to become this prophetic Messiah. He cast aside all thoughts of the self and readied himself as a sacrifice to the gods of the deep. Into the icy waters he walked, prepared to never return. No one knew what awaited Dendridos in the dark below, so only a hero willing to die would be fitting. As Dendridos reached further into the sea, he descended, disappearing from his kin. As the water swallowed him whole, he was left to himself. Nothing but him and the deep. Over the eons, the Akulnumen had adapted to breathe on land, so Dendridos would surely drown before he could reach the destination of his plunge. But soon, the need for breath disappeared. So far below, where 1,000 tons of pressure would have surely crushed him, they did not. All was serene, quiet, lonely, frightening, horrifying. Here, in the home of the vile creatures who had banished his kind so long ago, Dendridos felt the unknown claws of fear grip tight his heart. All was dark, aside from the faint and seldom blue flickers of sunlight that managed to lose themselves in this heart of darkness. Dendridos could see nothing. If there were massive creatures toiling just below him, or a great maw swallowing him at this very moment, he would be terribly unaware. In the darkness, frightening sights began to manifest at the whim of his mind. An enormous thing covered in scales writhed below. In the distance, there flickered lights which revealed the obscure outlines of ugly grimaces lined with teeth like needles. Yellow eyes watched him, opening and closing at random and appearing all around him. He started to lose a sense of orientation. Up and down ceased to exist and became one and the same. Blackness in all directions. All paths lead to the same darkness. Dendridos swam mindlessly, whether he was swimming in circles, or up or down, or not at all, was hidden from him. He would go on like this for an amount of time he could not name. Eventually, in the distance, there flickered a sickly amber light, drawing his gaze. He was hypnotized, like gripped by an unknown madness. Dendridos grew frenzied, reaching that distant light was the only thing that mattered. He muttered something incoherent. Then he froze, for the light was broken for a moment by the hulking flesh of a serpent in the depths. A nightmarish sound echoed through the black water. Somehow, he knew the monstrous beast was writhing all around him, yet he knew not where it was. The only time he could see it was when it came before the light and cast an eldritch silhouette into his eyes. Dendridos' many eyes darted back and forth. He became spastic with fear. Then the behemoth revealed itself to him. As it encroached, the unfit eyes of the Akalnuma became privy to this demon of the deep. It was of indescribable size, something only the darkness in the cold below could conceive, something that would never reside within the light. The terror's head was the size of a castle, its shining eyes the size of houses. Dendridos saw only the tip of its horrible visage. Its long body reaches down into unspeakable depths where only ghosts reside. Slowly, the horror began to open its maw. Inside, there was nothing but more blackness. The lost soul was unable to escape the bite, vanishing wholly within. The chilling aspect of it all was that within the mouth, it was just as dark as it had been before. If Dendridos hadn't seen the serpent beforehand, he would have been completely unaware of his doom. Inside the beast's maw, Dendridos scrambled to hold onto something to avoid being swallowed. He managed to hold onto something hard and smooth. It was a hold, but it seemed to wiggle slightly. As it did, the serpent seemed agitated and began trashing around. The water was the only thing that stopped Dendridos from being slammed against something with fatal force. As the monolithic body of the serpent continued trashing, the thing Dendridos was holding onto went loose, and he was thrust in some direction. Out of instinct, he extended the hard thing, which he was still holding, out in front of him, or at least what he believed to be in front. He felt the thing collide with something soft, and his tumble was dampened. An indescribable sound was cast into the darkness, and light shone faintly onto Dendridos. The monster had opened its mouth, and the amber light became visible once more. Dendridos stared at it through the black silhouette of 1,000 teeth. Now he understood what he had been holding on to, and a euphoria filled his soul. Destiny was near. His eyes flared up with a vicious desire and a divine violence. He pulled the thing out from the serpent's flesh, a tooth he had stolen from this terror of the deep. Dendridos drove the fang into the roof of the behemoth's mouth and sliced it open. The water grew warmer, and his skin tasted iron. He climbed out of the raging monster's maw and atop its head, where he split its skull using the tooth and a frenzied malice. The slain nightmare tumbled into the depths, and Dendridos along with it. Both of those ancient creatures vanished in the furtive darkness and the dominating cold and the unknown deep. The things Dendridos may or may not have seen amidst the amber light shall remain hidden. Stars and eternity pass away. The ancient ones speak booming soliloquy in the tongue of the cosmos. When Dendridos returned, he was not the same as when he left. Where before he was a creature of God's dominion, his new being was entirely indescribable, its eldritch form not even privy to the mind of a madman. It defied all logic and reason, and though it was frightening and impossible, it was magnificent. As the other Akalnumen gazed upon it, their minds conjured reduced images, interpreting the reality of this cosmic thing to the point of being digestible to their psyches. Some went mad and clawed their many eyes out. These were the one whose sight was truer. The rest merely wept in awe. In that moment, a realization of destiny and the foretelling of a new age beset the minds of all the ancient folk. What followed was the completion of an epoch and the birth of the future. The Akulnumans returned to the sea. In masses, they descended into the water, faithful with the whole of their being, that their new god would guide them. 1,000,000 creatures followed likewise, the kin of the Akulnuman. And so, the most intelligent and wondrous beings of the earth descended, leaving the land to be taken by another, untold ages from then. And this other came, as eons passed, and the world had all but forgotten the children of the past. From earth and flesh, man arose, and he would grow to dominate the land in a way not even the Akulnuman had not. Man was intelligent, but he was filled with hubris. If ever he became close to being a god, it was not a benevolent one. But man was no god, he was slave to one, and power is misplaced in a slave. He knew not what was best for him, he saw himself as being above all else. He believed himself a god, and that was what made him meek. As man built cities and nations, he refused to let nature in. He became a conqueror, a terror, and no corners of the earth were out of his gaze. Soon man set to the sea. Their blasphemous ways would unearth a thing so ancient that Beelzebub himself would posses their minds. With one of their constructions made to traverse the seas, they pulled the flesh of the old Dendridos from the deep. Over the ages, Dendridos had evolved and changed. Its mind had ascended to a higher realm and left its earthy shell behind. And now the humans found it. Most of the voyagers on that odyssey went mad. They scratched out their eyes in terror and disbelief. They tore at each other's throats and their own, severed their bodies with their steel blades. Something had gripped them, something that instantly coaxed them to desire the salvation of oblivion. None of them jumped into the water, for a fear of the unknown is sometimes greater than the will to die. They yearned for death, not out of fear, but out of a burning desire to forget and hide. And where could they hide from such a thing but in death? But even then, their prying minds were not stilled. Perhaps man is bound by fate to struggle forever to uncover all the surreptitious horrors of the cosmos, even if it kills him. Those few men left alive on the boat decided to deliver their impossible familiar to the lands of men. It must have been madness that had beset their minds. What else could have invoked such a decision? On the return voyage, the impossible mass of tentacles and starlight and mirrors was kept on the deck. When land was reached, the abomination was brought into horrible caverns dug beneath the cities of man. There it would be kept. Before too long, the humans decided to experiment with it. They touched it, drank its blood, ate from its eldritch flesh. Over millennia, they harvested the undying remnants of the old god. The star stuff that spilled from it granted the humans unparalleled euphoria, an intoxication of the soul. The flesh would grant them unnaturally long life. The shimmering secretion healed them of all their sorrows and ailments. And so, they harvested Dendrido's body for ages in the most blasphemous hereditary ritual the mind could conceive. It drove the humans mad, but by now madness seemed their natural state. They would not quit. Once the frenzy had begun, it would not stop until all the cosmic being was spent. Over the years of their shameless pillaging and abusing and vile exploitation, the prosperity of men grew, their cities reached new scale, their number exploded. Entire cultures were born of Dendrido's suffering. But it was all to be for naught, for they had chosen their curse long ago when they stole from the deep, when they brought secrets to the light that should have never been revealed. And so, when their drug, their shallow promise, their flesh farm was used up, they tumbled back into oblivion and were all the more scarred for it. What a base creature man must be, and how innovative in cruelty, how limitless in greed, how meagre of mind.